In today's video, we're going to be creating a Christmas card using Stamping Bella's Pamela the Poinsettia. Hi, I'm Stacy. Welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy and are inspired to create. Let's get started. I'm using this Pamela the Poinsettia from Stamping Bella. I'm removing my waffle flower grip mat out of my Misty because this is a foam mounted rubber stamp, so I got to take that out. That's some Express It Copic blending cardstock, and then I'm going to use some Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and we're going to color this up with Copics per usual. I usually color. It's my favorite thing to do. Is it yours? What do you like doing? Die cutting? Is it stamping? Is it coloring? Let me know. I'm going to go ahead and stamp her up twice. Make sure those lines are really dark and crisp. And then we're going to get into the coloring here. And I'm just going to be starting with my darkest and then working to my lightest. And then back to my darkest. And I typically start with the skin and hair. I don't know why. I guess if you're going to mess up your image when you're coloring it, and you mess up in the skin and hair, that's where most of the attention will be, maybe. Or maybe it's just how I've seen others color, because I learned how to use Copics from YouTube. But I always start with the skin and hair. It could also be a way of helping to, when you bring in your other colors, whether they're going to work together or not, or if you have to go back and darken up any areas, or add a little bit of different colors over the top, because you can always do that if you're not happy. You can go darker, but you can't go lighter. And you can color right over them with other colors and Copics, or add more to it. So, and this image is, it's a good size image, but a lot of the details, like the face and the hair, the only thing that has any real, large enough to really get any detail for shading would be the skirt, the flower petals. So, I always say this, color how you color. Do it what makes you happy, just as long as you create. And you can get away with one or two colors. You could use colored pencils, you could use watercolors, however you want. Just make sure you use the right ink and paper for it. And when I color yellow, a lot of time I like to bring in a purple tone because they are complementary colors, yellow and purple. It cancels out that purple, but it makes a more interesting shadow, I think, a more in-depth shadow than just going with a darker yellow. I really enjoy how it looks. I think it just gives a little more interest and a little bit more contrast. That's the word I was looking for, contrast. And I'm really coloring her up like the package. And then what I did was I brought in pattern paper that I had in my stash to go with that. So that was nice because the packaging and then the pattern paper I had, they went together. So, I'm taking my colors from the package. You could color this as a white poinsettia or poinsettia, however you say it. You could do it green, you could do it pink, you could red, blue, purple. You could do it whatever color you want. But there are like a white or cream colored poinsettia. And then also, those petals are, I think they're leaves, but I'm not positive. I mean, every time I've ever had one, that's how it's been. You could probably get away with doing it all green too. That would be pretty. Ooh, that would be pretty if you did like a green color or a tealish green, or even like these desaturated greens, and then did like a really dark green with maybe some shading with the purples with like a colored pencil, or blues undertones, and that would be pretty too. And just do the flower, some desaturated greens. Every time I color up an image, I always think about what can I do differently to it. how can I improve upon it? And I like to use, I don't know if you guys are the same way. Like, are you the same way with your stamps or your dies? There's like a handful that you always use, kind of like, having, 20 outfits in your closet or dresser, and then you only wear a handful of them. You go to your favorites. It's kind of how it is when I use my crafting stuff. Maybe that's so many of us have so many brand new stamps and dies, in our D-stashes, and then we buy them from somebody else, and we're like, look, they've never been used. They're like, I'm gonna use these. I'm gonna love them, and they just sit there like someone else because we go to our go-to, our favorites. Let me know if you're like that too. So I'm starting with a couple of the petals, and because I want to try to get the shading right, make sure I'm going to like it before I carry on throughout the whole skirt. That's why I did that. This Copic Express It blending cardstock, I was so used to coloring on the Nina Classic Solar White, right? I think I use 80 pound and 110, but I like the 80 pound because it blends a bit better for me. This is completely different to blend on, and I imagine it's very similar probably to the Spectrum Noir paper or any type of marker paper, but I'm not positive because I haven't used the others. I usually color darkest to lightest, and when I color on this paper, when I go back to my lightest, it really washes out those darks, and sometimes that works for me and sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the image and also the colors of the markers. And so you'll see me when I color this sometimes, like, I don't know if it's this one or the other card that I have to do a voiceover for. I think I worked from lightest to darkest because I didn't want those darks completely washed out. So if you find that that's happening to you, just go back with your darkest, or start with your lightest, and then go to your darkest. I don't know. I know when I first started watching videos on how to use Copics, it was always lightest to darkest, and then I'd seen people do darkest to lightest, and I'd always played around. Sometimes I went lightest to darkest, sometimes I went darkest to lightest, and then as I got more comfortable coloring, that's when I decided, like, I like the darkest to lightest, and it really does depend on what cardstock you're using as well. Like I said, and that Nina, it works really well with, but I noticed this one, the Copic Express It blending cardstock, not so much. For me anyways. And with certain colors, like, it will really lift colors, like if you work from darkest to lightest, depending on which markers you're using. Some of them, no matter what paper you're using, will just kind of wash out that darkest. And I try to get some contrast in my cards. This image to me is just so darling. What do you guys think of her? All the Stamping Bella stamps, I love them all. I mean, they have a pretty good variety. And I only have a handful of these stamps, and every image I have, I love. So I fussy cut those, and then I went in with a Memento Tuxedo Black cardstock and went around the edges because it helps darken the white core of the paper so that fussy cutting, if there's any errors, it kind of just like, if you didn't get it quite right, it helps blend it. That's a paper pad that I just picked up from Hobby Lobby. Hopefully I slowed it down enough for you to see the name. And then I used that the waffle flower nesting rectangle dies, and I would have used 2 if I had to. So if you have a larger sheet of glitter cardstock that you want to make a frame out of and you don't have frame dies, just use the 2 nesting ones, however thickness you want. Maybe the 2 next to each other, or skip one. And then you just nest them together with some washi tape. But it worked out because it was perfect just to go down the one size and get a frame because of the size of this glitter cardstock. And then I used liquid glue so that I could adjust it because it's not real stout, not like a chipboard. So it could be wonky, and it probably still is, but that way you have some time to adjust your frame. And then I just used those scalloped and stitched circle dies, and I got a piece of red cardstock in vellum because I wanted them, if you look at that pattern paper where it's got some pinky undertones, And so are the reds that I use to color her up. They do have a little bit more pink than some of the deeper reds in the Copic families. So the vellum I thought kind of tamed down that red, even though the cardstock's kind of a pink red to me, and it made a more pink hue to it. So that's why I chose to cut out vellum as well. And I'm just gluing her directly to it. And then when I attach her to the cardstock, the red cardstock behind her, I'll use foam tape and just put it behind her and not the entire vellum piece, because as we know, you can see glue through vellum. And I'm just piecing these back together. See, I'm going to come in with some foam tape and just behind the image. And that'll help with making that a little more pink or red. And if there's more pressure when they're holding the card, the recipient's holding the card, it'll look more red. If they don't have as much pressure on that vellum, it, like where they're holding it, it will look more pink, which I think plays well with the pattern paper. And you're going to see me fiddle, and I'm taking that straight sentiment and I'm curving it. And I put the scallop circle in there so that I can get an idea of how much that arch needed to be. And when I pulled it out, it was because I wanted to make sure it was centered up with that top sentiment that says warmest. And what I should have done was put her on there because she's up a little bit higher overlapping, so I had to pull that scallop circle down a little bit when I actually adhere it to the front of the card, but it all is the same angle anyway. I would have preferred to have it not as arched, maybe, because it's a little bit lower. The scallop circle ends up being a little bit lower. And then I'm just stamping with some Versamark ink, and I'm going to heat emboss this with some ultra fine gold embossing powder because it holds the detail. And then you see me go in there with a microfiber towel to get the embossing buddy, like the powder, off of the cardstock. And then I take a really soft eraser because it leaves a residue. This new embossing bag I have leaves that powder residue, and it just won't come off. And that soft eraser helps to remove it without damaging the paper or the embossing powder once it's heated. Then I'm bringing in some little embellishments here. Thought they played well with the paper. They've kind of got like a pinky undertone. I got these in a Black Friday mystery box from Simon Says Stamp, I think a couple years back. And then I'm adding some stickles, and I think those are diamond stickles. And then I added glossy accents to all the berries in the background of the paper, and I didn't get that on camera. So I'm showing you there's the glitter, and then if you look closely, I added the glossy accents to the background paper because I thought it would add more interest. What do you think? Do you like her? I think it's a really soft and sweet card. Thanks for spending some time with me, guys. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.